It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. And if I look tired, I'm tired. I finished Boss Fight episode 5 yesterday. Oh my god, I have to output it and upload it and then fight with YouTube about the music I paid for that it likes to flag anyway. But it's done. It will premiere on Monday. So be sure to be here on Monday, because there's a big surprise at the end that I'm excited about. I also got another major project done yesterday. And by the time you guys are watching this, I will have done 3 hours of radio interviews about video games on like different CBC radio stations across the country, if all goes well. So this has been a long week, but it's been a good week. And I'll do the Patreon thing now, but I'll get into the feedback. There's not going to be I'll do the Patreon. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. So I did get some responses to the interviewing OnlyFans and other people involved in like adult and sex work and stuff like that. I am going to start doing interviews on that next week. So I will start like racking up those and putting them up on my YouTube channel, which is super exciting. I did not expect it to happen this fast. So I'm going to save the OnlyFans stuff for those videos. So thank you to the people who reached out to contacts. There's at least one person she's a legit gamer. And it's like, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm not kidding when I said I go back to interviewing adult in a heartbeat. Like, I love those women. Not in the literal sense. Yeah, so I'll just leave that there. And then the Spider-Man thing was just kind of fun. It's nice to do something that doesn't set the world on fire, but doesn't make people outraged either. But the stuff that got like the most rewarding, like compelling feedback was Wellness Wednesday this week. People have been really responding to like useful information on the whole concept of constructive criticism. And it's nice because I had no idea how that was going to go. But people did like the suggestions for ego defense and learned helplessness. So I will be covering those. I do want to read one comment because it actually asks a question that involves information that I found interesting, but I had to cut from this Wellness Wednesday content just because it wasn't, remember I said it's not totally on topic. I'll save that. But the comment is, can I ask a hard question? I love hard questions. Okay, that's not the commenter. That's me. If you're starting off, can I ask a hard question? Please ask it. I much prefer hard questions than just somebody ranting. Do you think people start at the angry criticism phase, or does it develop over time? Seeing the anger, as you say, as an abuse response and or neuroatypicality, I think the issue is we start where you want us to be, but where does it get us? Many people will never be in the place to accept criticism, even if they claim otherwise or even ask for it. That in turn sets us up to get bitter because the person that said they were open to hearing our criticisms slammed the door in our face once we tried, no matter how calm or reasoned we were, and some think you just have to push harder. Hell, how often is a criticism criticized in exactly as harsh or harsher a way back? I mean, just as an example, remember when James Rolfe says he wasn't going to see Ghostbusters 2016 and got raked over the coals for that little, it doesn't look good. Far too many of us have been there, and it doesn't encourage playing nice. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I think I'm being realistic when I don't expect people to behave just to be morally right and get nothing for it. I don't think you're making excuses, commenter. First off, I don't think you're making excuses. I think it's fair commentary. The reasons people get hypercritical are complex, and they're a lifelong thing. And I'm going to go through various stages of development. Again, this may be kind of triggering for some people because it hits close to home. Again, I've been there. Um, the issues with criticism and hypercritical people. Now, this is not factoring in certain cultural affectations. This is like, there are certain places in the world where culturally, if praise is not culturally a thing, not like it is here. When you do like international business, you're warned that certain cultures, like if they think something is good, they say nothing because, okay, it's good. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about sort of standardized for the West, so to speak. But this need to criticize starts in childhood, like under 6, 7 years old. There are distinct phases of life. And, you know, people get very discouraged when you talk about these as if they're destiny. They're not. It's important to understand that these things happen and unpack them and heal from them so that you can move beyond them. If you had bad early life experiences, it doesn't mean you're broken forever. It means you have to sort of recognize the stuff, or it's beneficial for you to recognize the stuff so you can put it in the right box and put it away. Okay, you can come back from this stuff. So I don't want anybody to think that because I hit on something that happened to them, they're doomed. I went through this stuff. So it happens under the age of 7. When you're a little kid, you know, when you're 5 years old, kids can't distinguish between criticism and outright rejection from their parents, right? Or caretakers, siblings, or even if you're brutally picked on by peers or somewhat older kids you're not related to, right? You're a good person, but this is bad behavior. Kids don't have the prefrontal cortex development to make that distinction. You are good or you are bad. Good boy, bad boy. My dog Loki still doesn't understand this. He's just like, whatever. But kids, you cannot be brutal on a child. And so many people are, right? The patience to raise a resilient child is sometimes inhuman. And, you know, just because somebody snaps occasionally, they're not going to screw up their kids on occasion. But let's face it, there's a lot of people out there who are brutal on their 6-year-olds, right? I had a pretty brutal parent in that way, in terms of criticism, in terms of withering sustained criticism. So I was there. And it wasn't soft pedaled in my case. It was just, oof. Kids are attached emotionally to people who will take care of them. And emotionally brutalizing a child in that way makes them feel unworthy. Some people may not even remember this because they blocked it out. Trauma can make you forget. And again, it's not necessarily a parent. It's the stage of life. It's anything that made you feel unworthy at a very young age. And there's a lot of people walking around with this. So don't feel bad if you feel like called out right now. You're not. This is empathy, right? We're together in this one. What happens is that the developing brain struggles to take control of the situation, and so it learns self-criticism. Beat yourself up before the people you need love to survive from do it to you. Probably a lot of people are nodding right now. It's more common than any of us probably want to admit, and yet I really think that the hair trigger the internet has regarding abuse of minors is partially rooted in this. So these kids eventually move on to early adolescence. Some kids will start a process that's called identifying with the aggressor. It basically means you're tough, so you're scary, and so other people will be scared of you and won't criticize you. So people, they look around, they see bullies, they emulate the bullies, right? Then there's no fighting allowed in school anymore, so that tends to be verbal criticism, right? This is not across the board. Notice I said some. Not every kid who's, got hypercritical early life experiences goes on to be like this. Some kids develop a huge amount of empathy, and so they're the ones that get picked on, or they just sort of go into a shell. Either way, we're moving the problem along, right? It's becoming more rooted. That self-criticism is developing. By late adolescence, the self-criticism, the negative self-talk becomes you talk to other people the way you talk to yourself, so you're more isolated. You don't have that many friends. The ones that you do have, are they really your friends? Or they're just people that you're hanging around with for survival because high school fucking blows. By young adulthood, because of that ego defense issue and a lifetime of shit, the self-criticism is almost like white noise for some. It's offloaded entirely to other people. But most highly critical people are rougher on themselves than they are anyone else. They may not even realize it because now it's such habit that, it's just, well, everybody's like this, right? No, everyone is not like this. In order to get anything hard done, welcome to my last 3 months, right? In order to get anything hard done, hell, last year, you have to break the cycle of brutal self-criticism. It is not easy. It takes work. It's worth it. Okay? And this is what the commenter sort of touched on in their own way with the cycle. Everybody starts off well-meaning, right? And then something really hurts. And they go, wow, what the hell? And then the hurt doesn't stop. And it doesn't stop, no matter how many times they say stop. And this is why I started Wellness Wednesday with discussions about boundaries. Boundaries are really, really central to all this stuff. There's some new agey stuff that says, you train people how to treat you and all this. That's not entirely true. That's just sort of motivational thing. But it is true that there are just some people who they can't stop. They are negative people, and they will pull you down. If you are trying to do anything that takes effort, even if you're not good at it at first, you deserve praise for the attempt, right? Now, the thing about gaming is let's face it, a lot of us get into, especially single player games, because our experiences with other people are not the best. You may have seen me freaking out on, what was it, Tuesday night? Might have been Tuesday night. But there was a scene where a character on Stargirl, Jakeem Thunder, was playing Crystal Castles on the old paddle controller, and I freaked out, lost my mind, like super happy. That was just one of those things, because Crystal Castles came out in 83, so like right before the crash, and that's peak nerd to know Crystal Castles and to show like a modern day teenager playing Crystal Castles. And the whole thing was he was in that place, the character had to have like no friends and feel totally alone. And I was like, someone on this writing staff understands. Although Crystal Castles to me is actually fond memories, because I was in grade 4, I believe, at the time, and a couple of guys in my class introduced me to that game, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then they had it at Chuck E. Cheese, so there's actually a social memory for me for that. But because those early childhood memories, because I wasn't gifted, and so we were all sort of, you were a gifted kid above all else. Yeah, we were talk about hypercritical environments. Oh my God. But it was a real smack in the face when I wasn't in the gifted program anymore in like middle school and high school. And cause they just like dissolved the program in my area. So I went back to regular school, and in gifted, like nobody gave me a hard time about being a girl playing video games. Because we were all nerds, right? We were in this class for a reason. And then I remember it was around grade 7. So I had these great experiences in like grades 3 and 4. And, these great experiences in, grade 6 where, I saw the D&D dice and these guys let me play with them. And it was just kids playing with kids and there was nothing. And then I got into the 7th grade and all of a sudden it was, you're a girl, what do you know about video games? And it was just a fucking smack in the face, like visceral pain all of a sudden, like, everything I've known has been a lie, right? I'm joking around, but these experiences, I can relate to what the commenter's saying, is you can only get hit in the face so often before you come to expect it, right? And that experience also helps me relate to the being ignored thing. And when you have those negative early childhood experiences and you feel unworthy, the impulse is to keep pushing harder out of desperation, right? It's actually the only winning move is not to play thing. If somebody's not listening, all right, somebody slammed the door in your face. That's not about you. I get the feeling of rejection. Okay, I get it. But that's not about you. That's about them. It took being in television and all the slut shaming that went on with that. Like, imagine, guys, like, nerd, like, then, like, we were all nerds, and then, what the fuck, you're a girl, you're not allowed to be a nerd, you're like a nerd among nerds, dirty nerd. And then, like, high school, which is a shit show, and then university women's studies. Talk about, intense criticism and lack of validation and demands for submission. And then I started working in television, and that's a brutal, brutal industry. And it was overnight. I went from nerd women's studies, like feminazi, too dumb bimbo slut. It was months. It was just, oh, production nerd. Oh, this is the woman that's going to come and lecture us about saying misogynistic shit to dancers and stuff like that. To bimbo slut. It was like night and day. It was like a switch flipped. All of a sudden, I was a completely different person and a completely different grounds for invalidation. I was no longer an ugly fat nerd. I was titty bimbo. And not much changed. I got really skinny near the end of my TV career just from getting run down, but not at the beginning. I was still a thick girl at the beginning. It was just a camera's pointed at you and people see you differently. And yes, okay, I was wearing heels to work now instead of flat shoes because I was running all over the place doing production stuff. But that, like, opposites phenomenon was actually what made me realize all of this criticism is bullshit. Because I knew I was the same person. I knew I hadn't changed. It was people's view of me that had changed. That was completely subjective. And of course, I go back into gaming. I used my TV platform to to talk about video games in the mainstream before that was a thing. And then when, the TV show was done, I'm like, I'm getting older. I don't want to do this. It's hard on my body. Modeling is hard on the body. It's a lot of physical effort and, all that stuff, all the primping and prodding. It hasn't stopped sometimes, but at least I'm not doing it full time. If you had told me I was still doing all like the booby stuff at 43, I would have been like, no. But here I am. It's not all the time though. Like, that's the great thing. I can do this looking like frizzy shit in a Let's Be Super Friends shirt, right? And then I can put on a corset and it still works. I love you guys. But it was the sudden switch and then, going back to video games. And then it was like, what do you know, girl who wants to write about games for 10 fucking years? And then it's 10 years of literally the devil and cool chick okay with sexism. It's just like, I've been around enough and I've been tossed around in the storm enough that it's like, none of y'all know me. None of y'all have a fucking clue. I'm watching the pendulum swing. I've been through 2 complete waves of polar shifts now about people talking shit about me. And the extremes are so extreme that there's no way it's true. Now, most people get pigeonholed into a role, right? And so they never see that other side. They don't get to do the Marvel what if of your own fucking life, right? Like, so you don't get that perspective. And so you internalize that feeling of unworthiness and it makes it really hard. It's not an excuse. I imagine James Rolfe made that little comment about Ghostbusters and just the first time you get dogpiled on the internet, I don't care who you are, it's overwhelming and it's scary. And the second time and the third time, it gets worse for like a few times until then you realize you'll survive it. And then it's like, whatevs. Then it gets irritating for a while and then it gets funny. And then every so often somebody will just take such a cheap goddamn shot that it'll piss you off again. Just because of the sheer hypocrisy of it. And I am still on my path. I am still struggling dealing with the hypocrisy. It's something I know I need to work on and not react to so much. But you can tell yourself different stories about this stuff. You know, I've been having a lot of discussions with people about, remakes and media and it switching and not being for us anymore. And, I keep hearing people needing to fight to the death for this stuff. And I personally, I just, there's always something new that will come along that you love. I was a huge fan of the original Last of Us game. I was not a huge fan of The Last of Us 2, to put it lightly. But then Ghost of Tsushima came out and I utterly fell in love with that game. All right, I still have something to play. I still haven't played the new one. Holy shit. I think I may treat myself to that one with as a reward for finishing boss fight. But I still got to do the backer fulfillment, so that may have to wait. But something ends, something begins. That may end too. And then it'll begin again. There'll be new things. There's always something new coming out that's amazing. And I guess because the media is so transitory, I learned, in like The Darkness or in like Alan Wake, where the monsters can get you in the dark and you have to go from light source to light source. That's kind of how I see life. That you are going to go through periods of darkness and you just got to go from one pool of light to another, and the darkness is something you just have to get through to get to the other. Because if you focus on the darkness, that's where the monsters all go, right? So it is sort of framing, first of all, giving yourself permission to be upset about something. That sounds like not a big deal. But when you give yourself permission to be upset about something, you don't have to fight so hard. It's like, okay, I'm upset about this. I'm going to sit with it. And Cthulhu and Slimer and the ETs and Baby Yoda and the alien from Toy Story and the creepy fucking Superman pogo stick. Hello, new viewers from Rich, Review Tech USA's channel, who saw me using the pogo stick on his stream. You sit with it and you wait for it to pass before you respond. Because it's okay to feel hurt, sad, vulnerable, angry. You don't have to fight to the death against it. And then you look for something that makes you feel good instead of bad. For me, it is a lot of things right now. There are so many things I can think of that I watch and are awesome. First season of Superman and Lois was awesome. Stargirl is still awesome. Crystal Castles on Stargirl is still awesome. I've finished fucking boss fight. That's beyond fucking awesome. Oh my God. You do train your brain to focus on the good things instead of the things that make you feel rejected. And that means the rejection stings less. And so for people who are in the cycle, like in the low ebb of the cycle the commenter discussed, there are ways out of it. And this is where I want to ask you guys feedback about this. This is my question for you. I've been asking people privately about the idea of basically doing a private like Zoom call service. Sort of affordable rates. It's not therapy. It's not anything like that. It's just you can talk to someone who gives a shit. Just a layperson who cares. For an hour. And it's like $25. That's all. It's not the $150 that your base level counselor costs. Apparently the US, it's even more than that. Somebody showed me a graphic about what therapy costs in the US. I plotzed. But I'm really thinking about, there's disclaimers all over the place and we'll have to have waivers and like all that stuff. And everybody's got to be real clear about what it is. But the more I do Wellness Wednesday and the more I see these comments, and it just seems like people just need some sincere pick-me-ups, and people just need a little bit of protected time where someone will listen to them and not slam the door in their face. So what do you guys think of a service like this, and what would you look for something like this? Because at this point, I'm really seriously considering looking at this as just a stopgap solution for people who don't have mental illness in the classical sense of the term, not people who need medication, people who have just had a rough time of it. You know, let me know what you think of the idea. A few people this week convinced me it's not terrible. I'm prepared to be reconvinced it's terrible. I don't know. It's something that's come up, and it's something I keep coming back to. And, Wellness Wednesday has just made me feel more and more strongly that something needs to be done. And I'm arrogant enough to think I might be the one to do it. Because video games. Okay, guys, let me know. Looking forward to your feedback. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Boss fight finale on Monday. Thanks for watching.